we're going to go over the double crochet stitch. So right now I have chain of 10 with 10 double crochets. With 10 double crochets already done. So since we're doing double crochets, you're going to need to chain 2 to make our next step up to the next row. 1, 2. Then we rotate our work, grab our yarn working off of our skein, go into our work, there's our V, pulling our yarn from our skein. We now have 3 loops. The loop we started with, the loop we took before we went to our work, and the fresh loop we took through our work. We're going to get a loop from the yarn, and we're going to go through the first 2 loops, this one and this one. So loop 1, and then one more loop, loop 2. That leaves our original loop, and then when we just pull through, you can get yarn off the skein again, so pull fresh yarn and go through the last 2 loops. So now you're left with 1 loop on the hook, and that was a double crochet. So now we're going to do it again. We're going to take yarn from our skein, wrap it around, take our hook, go into our work, take yarn from our skein, wrap it around, pull it through our work. We now have 3 loops on our hook. Our original loop, our first wrap, and then the wrap we pulled through our work. We're going to wrap it around our hook and only pull through 1 and 2. Ready? 1 loop, 2 loops. Now we should only have 2 loops on here. We're going to wrap our yarn again and pull through the last 2 loops. Wrapping my yarn, going into my work, wrapping my yarn, pulling it through my work, 3 loops, wrapping my yarn, going through 1 loop. I went through both at the same time. So I went through 1 loop, 2 loops. Now I'm down to my original loop and the loops I've been pulling through. Wrap it around again and pull through the last 2 loops. So right now I have my chain 2 that steps me up to my row, 1 double crochet right here between my 2 fingers, 2 double crochets, and 3. Wrap my yarn around my hook, go into my work, wrap it around, pull it through my work, 3 loops, wrap it around my yarn, pull it through 1, 2, I have 2 loops on my hook, wrap it around, and pull through. Now some of you might still be at the beginning stages of how you hold it. I haven't figured out your hand placement, so you might be holding the yarn still, wrapping with your hand, taking your yarn, going through it, wrapping with your yarn again, making sure the yarn stays. I keep pushing it up. Manually pulling it over, wrapping it again, and pulling it over 1 loop at a time. And that's okay. Eventually, wrapping it around, dropping it, using my thumb and finger and pulling it up, my thumb and finger and pulling it up. If you're still at that stage, that's fine. Eventually you'll learn what works best for you and how you want to hold your yarn, how you want to wrap. Remember, I do both methods at the same time. I flick my yarn with my finger and I drop my hook. When you're going into your work for double crochet, you're not going into the big hole. You're going right below that V. See, there's the one side, there's the other. From the side view, see how there's the bigger hole and the smaller hole. And the smaller hole is right below the V. It's where you're going in for your work. So again, when you look at your stitches, you got the bigger hole, you have the smaller hole. The smaller hole is right underneath the V. Always want to go under that V. You might still be at the stages where you haven't figured out how you want to do it. I do both. Remember, I drop my hook and wrap my finger. Some people just drop their hook. Let's get my finger out of the way. Some people just drop their hook and wrap. Some people just take the yarn and flick it around. Oops, sorry. And flick it around. I do both. So, as you see, I drop my hook and flick it around. I do a little both. You could do whatever you're going to find most natural. So I wrap my yarn around, I go into my work, I wrap it around again, I pull through 3 loops, wrap it around, pull through 1 loop, pull through 2 loops, got 2 loops on my hook again, and I pull through both. Wrap it around. Remember, if you're still at the beginning stages, you can wrap it around and drop it. But remember, it gets loose. You gotta be careful, because if it gets loose and falls off, it's not helpful. So you need to hold it with your other side, or have a firm fist grip still. If you can't get that finger up, your hands are smaller, you can do the fist grip. Go into your work. If you need to manually bring it over, the work over, that's fine too. Wrap it around and drop it. Just make sure it stays. And then manually bring up the work over. Let the yarn you wrapped get hooked. Over. Then I got my 3 loops. I'm going to bring my yarn around and drop it. I'm going to manually bring 1 loop, 2, oops, I'm splitting the yarn, 2 loops, oops, and I split the yarn. So, as you can see, I split the yarn, and that's okay. Put it back. But it's a little loose, so I take the yarn I'm working with from my skein, pull it, and tighten it. Now manually do it again. Drop my yarn, pinch my loops I want to pull up, make sure my yarn that's wrapped gets caught under the hook. Yep, and I split the yarn again. That's okay. It's harder to see on camera. I pull it up. I still got to bring my last loop up and over. And it's loose, so I tighten it down a little bit. But eventually you'll find what hand movements fit you better. So I'm getting close to the end. My last one. Oops, as I dropped it. And it's double crochet, so I need to chain 2 times to get up my step. 1, 2, and then I rotate my yarn. Now I have my foundation chain, 1 row and 2 rows of double crochet. I can keep going. I got 3 rows. Well, the start of 3 rows. As you can see, it's much taller than the single crochet and the half double crochet. Remember, the half double crochet is quite similar. We wrap, we go in, oops, we wrap, we pull out. But this is where it changes. When we wrap, we pull through all 3 loops. We don't do that with double crochet. We only pull through 2. And then we wrap one more time, and that's where you get your double. There's your double crochet. It's nice and soft, but it is holey. So it depends on what you're doing, what kind of stitch you're going to use. And remember, you don't go down to the big hole. You go right below the V.